Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia and I discuss the idea of the invisible string amidst pain, suffering, and the human experience. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Virginia, in continuing this conversation around the invisible string, while this is a universal principle, there's also the truth of the depravity of humanity. And you said something earlier, too, that when we experience these fractures, the breaking of the invisible string, that pain helps us to identify the disease. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, pain is beautiful in many ways. It chisels, it refines us. If we can see that perhaps the things we've assessed, we've judged about, let's say, our families of origin, and the things that hurt us in our own family systems, let's say, as a result of the imperfections of our own parents, of the depravity of what it is to be human, and sometimes we're blinded by our own brokenness. If we can accept that as a universal condition, if you will, then it eliminates our propensity to be judgmental, because it's not a them and us situation. It's an us. And if after that examination, we can become curious and wonder, wow, we're all in this position together, yet we desire each other. We hunger for each other. We need each other. And we keep creating each other's. We keep recreating ourselves. There must be a bigger story behind this than us, because intuitively we have a hunger to love. We have a desire to forgive. We have a need to reconcile and restore. Why? Because we were meant to be whole. So confusion, chaos, and disease that comes with all those impairments are not going to be a place of rest for us, because we were made by a brilliant being who says, I am. And that means he's not in the he was, he chose, or I told you, or I did, or I said, or I became, and he wasn't in that. He's not in the I'm going to be, and you will because I said. He's in the I am. So no matter what lies behind you, what is before you, there's intuitive sense to always do what? Figure out what's happening right now, right? But sometimes that becomes very difficult. So if we can just hang on to the lifeline of the I am, who says, I'm in the moment here with you, somehow that becomes a lifeline to leverage growth. Because I don't know what's before me, really. And what's behind me is a waste of time, because it's past. I can't do anything about that. I can only live with the I am and the I am, and with the intentionality of my deepest convictions from the things I've learned and the things I don't want to repeat. And that is the fruit of a loving being, creator being that's in the moment with me with the I am, because there's desire for me to be more. And so I think that's the fruit of love.
What you just said, though, might sound to some people like a contradiction when we talk about how the traumas may be from a childhood experience and how that informs the pain that they might be feeling right now, right? So how, I can see that it's not a contradiction, right? Both of those things can be true and exist in the same space, but how can we describe this to people in such a way that they can understand that something from their past may be as pain in the now, and looking at the I am in that pain in the now?
That's a big question. And I probably deserve it for going down the rabbit trail I just went down. But in the simplest ways, I think I want to invite people, as a consequence of the knowledge that there is something that tethers us to our Creator God, and we know because we hunger for Him. And when we're in serious trouble, everybody prays. Everybody prays. Some of the most well-known atheists, and I'm not going to take time to name them right now, or great scientists or thinkers who became a law unto themselves. I have quote after quote after quote after quote of them referencing and mentioning God. because he's the elephant in the room. You can't hypothesize on anything or build on anything without the knowledge that there's this invisible string there, and he can't be ignored. If we could seek justice, true justice, without becoming a law unto ourselves and knowing that there's a lawgiver, there's a lawmaker, there's somebody who's sustaining life and makes everything just work every day. We don't have to worry about the sun coming up. We don't have to worry about the rotation of the earth. We don't have to worry about the distance of the sun from the earth. We don't have to worry about this. There are laws set in place. There's something that's sustaining life. If we could, for a year, for 12 months, say, okay, for 12 months, God, I'm going to hold on to the fact that what Virginia just said is the absolute truth. Science proves that every single day. There's no escaping it. My conscience bears witness that there's something bigger than me because I've cried out to you so many times. And intuitively, I know that you're there, and I can see the mess we're in, individually, corporately, together. I can see the perils of the human condition. For 12 months, I'm going to hold on to you. I want to learn about you. Who are you? What did you say about me? What did you say about time? What did you say about the world and nations? I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to investigate it. But I can only do so much if you're there. Can you, with that invisible string that you've put in motion in time, that you've woven our hearts together, you've given me measures of compassion for the plight of the human condition. Can you please tug my heart towards you? Can you just please give me a lifeline so that I can hear you, so that I can see you, so that I can feel you? I think when our focus shifts from judging each other and only thinking about the impact that people have on us, and we can begin to think of the bigger picture and these universal principles common to us all, that are common sense. There's no atheists in foxholes. That's one of my favorite quotes because it's true, right? It's obvious. We hear, we see, we understand, we know, because we've been in our own foxholes, relatively speaking. And then there's the natural affection, the desire to understand. That right there explains that the fingerprint of God is woven into the anatomy of your very own soul. So it is fruitless to spend time and talent and treasure pursuing knowledge and understanding of what happened to us and what was wrong with our parents and all of that, without also in that curiosity or discourse or peril or pain. It's not productive not to also give God a listen. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I don't know how we leverage and access and enjoy that invisible string and cause it to leverage hopes and dreams and passions that we have without asking those deeper questions of ourselves and others. So instead, I guess, of looking at what's wrong in our lives, really think about all the things that are beautiful and life-giving. But to do that, we have to become curious about this desire that we have for life and love and unity and connection and all that. And that should lead us to a question about God. Because if not, we're so limited in our capacities that we end up choking ourselves with the strings of our own makings, because we impose heavy yokes on each other and expectations of things that we don't do. Or we seduce each other into defending and explaining things that we ourselves can't live by that same standard. I think it's called gaslighting. There's all kinds of psychological labels for what I'm describing, that if we become curious about these things, we can put labels down. We can put explanations down. I want to invite us to become curious and to wonder, and to, when we put all the chips on the table, to really take into account our own limitations and our own shortcomings before we cast judgment on everything that wasn't right about our parents, about our siblings, about our childhoods, about our jobs, about our bosses, about our clients, about our patients, about our colleagues. It's so not productive. It is life-sapping and compromises these beautiful strings we all have access to.
What would you say to someone who seems to be fixated on the pain? Because I think that can be the seduction to say that the pain is the problem, right? Rather than the cause of the pain being the problem. For example, right, if someone has gallbladder pain, they may go to a surgeon and that surgeon may remove the gallbladder. And then the gallbladder is no longer there, but they continue to experience phantom pain.
Right. Because the gallbladder wasn't the problem. It's the root cause is the pain that they weren't willing to address. Funny you should bring that up. I have a client who has horrific kidney stones that are developing. physiologically and anatomically. I mean, we know what to do with these kinds of things. But I went to pull the book out. I asked her to take a picture of the book page that explained the emotional constitution of kidney stones and why they would keep coming. And she sat there and was in so much pain that, of course, we've got to deal with the pain and the practical pain of the kidney stones. But in our world, as you well know, the kidney stone is the least of our problems because we're root cause people. We want the dominoes to stop collapsing, and we need to deal with the anatomy of the kidney stones because, God forbid, they remove our kidney or she's on dialysis the rest of her life. The next domino is going to drop because the compromised emotional state, unresolved conflicts, if you will, are going to go to the next organ and the next organ and the next organ. And we see this every single day. We don't diagnose, we don't treat, and we don't cure. But we do understand the matrix, that the spirit, the soul, and the body cannot be separated from the very constitution of what God says is his anatomy, which is he's a spirit. And the work of the soul, mind, heart, will, conscience, and feelings of an individual transpires where? By the power and authority of the Holy Spirit, the person's conscience and their innermost being in their psychology, right? And it manifests in where? Jesus had a body, in the body. Tesla tapped into this, by the way. Go study Tesla and go study why he said 369 can explain the world. Because it can, and it does. And if you can understand the anatomy of what we're talking about, which these are complex things and ideas, but in the simplest of forms, you're a triune being, spirit, soul, and body, made by a triune being, God, who said he's a spirit, a soul, and came in the form of a body. And the reason we know that this is a narrative that at least deserves the merit and the attention of everyone listening is because that is the only religion in the world where God reaches man and says, come, I did it all. All you have to do is come and trust and believe, and I will heal your innermost beings. Every other religion in the world is about what man does to reach God. This is God reaching us. And going back to the narrative of that string, I think that's why we experience the desire and the hunger for each other, because God made us to be in fellowship and in relationship with him. He made us for his pleasure. That's why he made us like him, to have free choice and be free. Old Testament stuff, when you think about that, was a time of covenant. People saw angels, they had visions, they saw all those things. That was a contract, it was an agreement. If this, then that. But the New Testament rendition of this big narrative that I hold is the ultimate invisible string, is one of consequence, because man is free now and has the power and authority because of the indwelling that comes of the Holy Spirit. When he recognizes the brokenness of his own depravity, he has power and authority now outside of him, because he've asked God, hey, I see my limitations. Can you come in and indwell me? And with that indwelling comes power and authority to exercise liberty, the capacity to self-govern and to secure freedom. That's why Jesus was able to promise freedom, because if a person's able to reconcile the conflict within themselves, they can experience freedom, because the power and authority comes from that invisible heartstring that tethers your very constitution together so you can experience freedom and healing and all these things. It's amazing. And remember, healing is about freedom. It's not about seeking a cure. We all have an appointment with destiny. So when we talk about healing, we're not talking about a cure. Cure is external. Healing is internal. Is this profound knowledge of these ideas that I'm discussing, that when they come into alignment with your reality, by the way, when they come into alignment with your reality, you're free. That doesn't mean you don't cry. It doesn't mean you're not suffering. It doesn't mean you're not sad. It means that something supernatural happens and you're able to transcend circumstances, transcend judgments of people, transcend a horrible boss, transcend. And so you live in another realm, almost in another kingdom. It's the strangest thing. It's difficult to explain to people. But I think leveraging and accessing that ultimate string to God is at the heart, at the core of what R.E.S.T tries to explain to people. Science bears witness of the merit and the truth of what I just explained.
Mark your calendars for a night of impact at the Rest and Recover America Gala on Thursday, October 9, 2025, at the stunning Villa Tortorella. Join us for an unforgettable evening, a gala celebrating our first responder community and supporting the efforts of Rest and Recover America as they provide life-changing mental health services to first responders. There will be a dinner, special guest speakers, including our keynote speaker, Hedia Miramati Falco, and a silent auction. Tickets are limited, so don't wait. Secure your spot today at the link in the show notes. Together, with your support, we can directly strengthen and expand our mission to restore well-being and renew capacity to thrive for our first responders. Join us for a night of hope, celebration, and giving back. Get your tickets now. So, in immense emotional or even physical pain, where and how does one access the invisible string of love, or even the resilience to choose love in those?
That's a great question. I have personally witnessed firsthand that the brokenhearted and those who suffer have access to information and have the ear of God. He's close to the brokenhearted and the suffering. And I've seen it firsthand. Sometimes when we see the suffering and we look at them from the outside in, we can't identify with that kind of suffering and that kind of pain because it's not our story. It's their pilgrimage in time. It's not ours. We can love, we can support, we can come alongside of, but it is God's business. And that kind of immense suffering causes a person to be in the presence of the divine if they so seek, or to be in the presence of hell if they so seek. The spiritual realm is very real, and the person in the suffering chooses which they align with. And I've seen both. One leads you to the most tragic and unthinkable deterioration and death that you can even imagine. I don't even want to play that out for people, to be honest with you. It was sacred, it was intimate, and it was something that just transcends. But I have seen immense and unthinkable suffering in the presence of a living God. It was equally radiant. One was so dark, but the other so bright and brilliant and captivating. It was an incredible thing to witness. And I guess it's consistent with how we choose to live our life. We choose to live believing there is God, that people are sacred, that we treat each other with love, we show up with integrity, and we just walk with each other with measures of integrity through life. Or we judge, we're angry, we're bitter, we're unforgiving. And the fruit of both of those things is very different in how it manifests in family systems. So I guess everybody listening, and me included, and you as well, Jonathan, we have the choice to choose to love or hate, to live in the light or darkness, to live in forgiveness or bitterness and unforgiveness, to live knowing that we're no better than the things and the people we judge. And we need to ask God to give us measures of compassion for one another, or we literally turn to darkness and justify our anger. We choose life or death. And the consequence of that really determines what that invisible string looks like in our individual lives, because it's there. The invisible string is there for all of us. And I was really captivated and I was so inspired. But when I was talking to Patrice the other day, I noticed that behind her was a wall of crosses. And that cross represents the bridge between the world of light and darkness. And intuitively, I'm just captivated by this universal symbol of love. It's not always worn by the people that choose that camp, but I think it's very interesting that it's universal. And even though she didn't directly address the sacrifice of Christ that created the bridge for us to cross over immediately and instantly, in spite of the suffering that comes in our spirit, our soul, or our body. Let's face it, suffering comes in all those realms. He says, I'm right here. I'll never leave you or forsake you. I am the bridge to life. I think that's a beautiful story. I think we're living in a beautiful time. I think we're seeing before us choose life or death. There's a lot of political narratives. There's a lot of economic narratives. There's a lot of lies. There's a lot of deception. There's a lot of propaganda. But what's beautiful is that truth floats. So is the bitterness in our heart going to keep us from seeking, accepting, and then leveraging truth? Or is it going to keep us angry, bitter, judgmental, and divisive? I don't know. But that determines our capacity to access the ultimate string that is universal. It's not going to go away because you don't believe in it. It's not going to go away. It's there. The question is, do you want to reach for that lifeline, which ultimately leads you to the heart of God or not? At the end of the day, the things that afflict us, the things that hinder our capacity to access, see, leverage that invisible string, the faith, if you will, that there is something there and there's goodness and there is somebody out there that cares, are very real. The child that's being beaten, the wife that's being cheated on, the husband that is working so hard to take care of his family and he gets fired without explanation, the mom that is working multiple jobs to take care of her children and is very much alone, the person who's passing away and has young children and doesn't know what's going to become of her children, the person who's been suffering and fighting cancer for breast cancer, and she's in her early 40s and has just suffered. It's been a decade of suffering. And the mother and the father who have known nothing but illness among their children, between their children, within their marriage, individually and together. And the father who loses his wife and his entire family in a car accident. The brutality and of what these first responders have been sharing with us, and that we know that I want to be sensitive about getting into particulars with. But there is what I called, for the sake of clarity, for the sake of brevity in this podcast, as some are the fruit of the human condition, but some are the fruit of just what feels like evil, the question of evil that's descended upon us. But whether it is the fruit of our own making, or the fruit of the human condition, or the fruit of an evil that seems to hover upon humanity, there's this intuitive need, the intuitive hunger to understand and to find meaning and purpose and significance. And that is evidence of this beautiful lifeline that we all have access to, and will lead us directly to the heart of God, because we're made in His image. We have an identity that is directly connected to the destiny that He set in place for each of us individually before the beginning of time. And that's a universal principle, because we've got that quiet, still voice that calls us and beckons us to not quit, to persevere, to continue. And I profoundly believe, because I've been witness to it, that on the other side of this experience that we call time, there is a glorious, glorious, glorious existence. And I think I want to close with this. I can make a case for that point of view. When the sperm hits the egg, light. When the child comes into the world, light. When we transition out of time, light. Everybody first sees a light. So I want to encourage our listening audience by saying this. Life is really all about beginnings, and there is light and life and liberty at every junction. And I want to invite you to really ponder what I just said, because science and testimonies and all that bears witness, obviously, of what I just said, because with shared experiences we've had, not quite transitioning out of time, but many people who have and come back, it's the first thing they say, talk about a light. But we're told in ancient documents that have been very well substantiated historically in terms as to their accuracy, that God created light, life, liberty, love, and then law, and put everything in motion. And on the sixth day, He made man. And His first state of being in activity with man was rest. He did all the work and we rested. 4,000 years later, He says He comes into time again, or so ancient documents and historians and all that very well documented. He comes into time again. And what does He do? The ultimate work. Defeats the darkness that haunts us, the compromises that kill us. He destroys the power of all that over us, to have dominion over us. And He says you can self-govern, right? But He did all the work. Interesting. 3 days in hell. It's just kind of interesting. The patterns of 3, and I don't have time to get into all of them again. But He did all the work, and He invited us into what? Rest. Come to me if you're weary, right? And heavy burden, and I will give you rest. The promise of rest and the gift of freedom came from Him. But He did all the work. Again, can't help but see the landscape being laid out and interesting things happening all over the world that we're getting. He does all the work in us and through us now, in collaboration with us, in partnership with us. But He does the heavy lifting. If we surrender our life to this power and the authority of God that will indwell us if we ask him to, by the sacrifice of this historic figure who said he was God. He works in us, and then we enter into what? Eternal rest. So it began with rest in Genesis. 2,000 some years ago, he invited us personally and intimately, not just into rest, but he promised he would indwell us. And then fast forward, the end of the age for us, who knows when that will be individually, right? I could be gone tomorrow. But he's been doing all the heavy lifting with me. He's been doing the work in me and through me. I got to choose to collaborate with him or not. But then I look forward to that final day of rest. It's a law of nature. It's self-evident. It speaks to our natural affection. Without rest, we die. I guess at the end of the day, I want to invite people to make sense of the really pathetic words I have to communicate a beautiful story. I've experienced it. I've seen it. I've walked thousands of people to it, and we don't have anything to be afraid of. There's this beautiful adventure we can all step into. I just want to invite people to give it a listen. We don't understand love. We don't understand the power of that invisible string that's woven into the tapestry of your very anatomy. And he's always calling you to come back home, to come back to him. He knows you. He knows your innermost being. He knows every part of you. He's called you by name. Listen and step into rest. He promised you rest. He'll never let you down. He'll give you freedom. Thanks, Jonathan.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about REST, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of Rest. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of REST, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.